Since this is our first show here on WAAR Radio, I thought it would be a coup to have such a huge liberal icon such as San Francisco Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. She was the first woman Speaker of the House of Representatives in the history of the United States, and she also oversaw some amazing records under her watch. She was in charge of the laws, regulations, and budgets coming out of the House that brought about the Great Recession of 2008, as well as being instrumental in bringing about a tsunami of Republican victories in the 2010 midterm election. Such a disaster for one party in an election that hadn't been matched since the 1940s. So I guess you could say that Nancy Pelosi is an even bigger Republican icon, as she has single-handedly showed the country how destructive liberalism is. The same liberalism that brought about disaster and misery not only to the U.S. economy, but sent the Democratic House into the Dark Ages. So I'd like to welcome the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
My pleasure.
Now, before we get started, would you like me to refer to you as Madam Speaker or America's favorite dingbat?
Not pleased with the disrespect.
Okie dokie. So I guess I'll call you Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
So, Madam Speaker, since we all know you are a history buff, I would like to get some historical perspective before we delve into the financial crisis that happened 18 months after you and fellow Democrat Harry Reid took over the legislative branch of the government. Since many people compare the 2008 financial crisis to the Great Depression, please tell us everything you know about the Great Depression that hit in 1929.
I don't know what was so great about the Depression, but that's the name they give it.
Alrighty then, let's move on. So let's jump ahead from the Great Depression.
I don't know what was so great about the Depression, but that's the name they give it.
Yeah, we understand how that could be confusing for you. Let's jump ahead to the day you and Harry Reid took over the House and Senate, respectively.
Not pleased with the disrespect.
No, I said respectively.
That's right.
Let's go to the day that the 110th Congress was sworn in. That infamous day was January 3rd, 2007. You and Reid inherited 4.6 unemployment from George W. Bush. The Dow Jones average was over 12,500 and on its way to a record 14,000. Of course, that was without the Fed printing trillions of dollars, as the current Dow is propped up by what they call quantitative easing 1, 2, and 3, which is trillions going to the 1% Wall Street donors of Obama. And George Bush's last GDP of 2006 was 3.5%. A gallon of gas cost $2.29, and President Bush had just set an all-time record on jobs with 51 straight months of job creation. Now, since you inherited 4.6 unemployment from him and such a strong, steady economy, what was your first thought?
If we do not have an economic recovery package, 500 million Americans lose their jobs.
So you say that 500 million people would lose their jobs?
500 million Americans lose their jobs.
Are you serious?
Well, it's about timing. It's about timing, and it's about timing.
Well, yes, it is about timing. You and the Democrats took over the insanely low unemployment and decided to raise the minimum wage. This brilliant idea ended Bush's record of consecutive months of job creation, as well as in igniting layoffs of low-wage earners that set up the economy to be ripe for a recession in the fall of 2008. What the heck were you thinking?
Bad policies that are costing too much.
Well, why did you Democrats create and pass such a fiscally repugnant budget?
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Well, that seems like the only way you Democrats know how to legislate, flying by the seat of your pants. Is that any way to legislate the biggest economic engine in the entire world?
That's terrible.
Well, at least we agree on that. Now let me ask you another question. Since you're in charge of the fiscal year 2008 budget, you must have some sort of knowledge about economics. Since that budget was such a disaster for not only the American people, but for most of the world, meaning the countries that depend on the #1 economy in the world being strong, I would like to give you just a little test so I can gauge to see if you were the right Speaker of the House at such a crucial time in American history.
Well, I think it's fine.
Just a small Econ 101 question. What's 1 + 1?
I don't know.
I think we found out the root of the problem, and of course, which party caused the Great Recession.
Why aren't we talking about something else?
Okay, well, what would you like to talk about, Madam Speaker?
Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi.
So you would like to talk about Benghazi, and Benghazi?
That's right.
All three?
All three are different.
All three are different?
All three are different.
Oh, I understand. You mean you want to discuss the first Benghazi where multiple requests of security at the consulate were either ignored by the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton or flat out denied?
That's right.
And the second Benghazi where Ambassador Chris Stevens, the first U.S. ambassador to be killed in over 40 years, Ty Woods, Glenn Doherty, and Sean Smith were abandoned by Hillary and President Obama for 7 hours to be slaughtered without any help whatsoever being sent?
That's right.
And of course, the third Benghazi I'm sure you want to talk about is the despicable, politically motivated cover-up of the entire terrorist attack from A to Z, a cover-up that is still being exposed to this day, 20 months after the terrorist attack in Libya, as new evidence of mass deception, a campaign orchestrated from the White House comes to light.
Diversion, subterfuge.
Exactly right, Ms. Pelosi. This administration that claimed it was going to be the most transparent in history is trying to cover up the Benghazi terror attack with diversion and subterfuge.
Diversion, subterfuge.
I just said that.
We need some answers.
I totally agree. Now I am proud to say that your Chief of Staff told me that you will be making breaking news here on CFJ's Ascend Conservatism Show, a real coup for WAAR Radio. I was told that you have done a 180 and changed your mind about the newly formed Select Committee to investigate the Benghazi attack, a committee led by South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy, someone who is infinitely more intelligent than you.
Not pleased with the disrespect.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Well, I think it's fine.
So please tell us, what is your new position on the upcoming Select Committee hearings?
This is an issue that has to be dealt with, but it doesn't mean, oh, it's a political issue, so we're going to run away from it. Okay. No, it's too valuable for the American people. What is important about it is that the American people are well served, not who gets reelected.
Well, that is great that you're on board with the Select Committee, because the fact that the 4 Americans were left without enough security, then left to fend for themselves for 7 hours during a sustained terrorist attack, and then the Obama White House engages in an Nixonian-style cover-up, I think will turn out to be one of the most shameful events in this country's history, perpetrated by a pathetically clueless but criminally conniving administration.
But the thing is this is a big deal. This is a very important for the American people.
I agree with you, Madam Speaker.
Thank God.
Before we move on to our last segment about the Affordable Care Act,
well, the fact is, I'll get back to the Affordable Care Act, right. And the affordable was named that because it makes it affordable.
If you say so. Before we move on, I would like to lighten things up a bit and do something a little whimsical. I don't want this interview to become too contentious. Let's play hide and seek.
There you are.
Madam Speaker, the concept of hide and seek is that I hide first and then you seek. You're not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, are you?
Not pleased with the disrespect.
My apologies. Let's move on to our last segment, the Affordable Care Act.
Well, the fact is, I'll get back to the Affordable Care Act, right. And the affordable was named that because it makes it affordable.
So you say. When President Obama met with the Republicans at the Blair House to discuss his upcoming health care reform, they told the president that millions would lose their insurance because their health plans would have to be canceled due to the new law. The president agreed with the GOP about the future cancellation of plans, but said it would be worth it.
That's terrible.
Agreed. Then Obamacare was passed in a completely partisan manner with 0 votes from the Republicans. He then went around the country and repeated ad nauseum what PolitiFact calls the lie of the year. Emphasis on fact. Let's hear this oldie but a goodie one more time.
If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your private health insurance plan, you can keep your plan. Period.
He said it even though he knew that it was a bald-faced lie.
That's terrible.
Exactly, Madam Speaker. Then, when Ted Cruz filibustered to get a delay in the individual mandate to save ordinary Americans from cancellations, Harry Reid and President Obama refused to budge. So the truth is that they shut down the government just to keep the individual mandate in place, even though they let their corporate cronies slide for 2 more years on the business mandate.
That's terrible.
So the ensuing millions upon millions of cancellations were the Democrats doing. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I really can't speak to it.
What do you have to say to all those who lost their coverage?
And so while there's a lot of hoop-de-doo and ado about what's happening.
What? How is that supposed to help the people who lost their coverage because of Obamacare?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, can you at least give us your opinion on President Obama repeating what he knew to be an outright lie about keeping your plans and doctrine just to get reelected in 2012?
And people said to me, "Are you calling the president a liar?" I said, "I'm stating a fact." And so I've been saying that for years. Is that an impeachable offense? It has not been thought so for the president to make that misrepresentation is I think, shameful for our country. But I'm not sure that it would result in his impeachment and to impeach the president. In fact, I've said the president just wasn't worth it.
Wow, those are some harsh words for the leader of your party, as well as liberalism's biggest hope at achieving a socialist utopia.
So we have to completely step back and see the bigger picture.
Oh yeah? And what do you see as the big picture?
The president just wasn't worth it.
Ouch. Now we're coming close to the end of our revealing interview. I would like to give you my personal opinion on your reign as the leader of the House of Representatives, if you don't mind.
Well, I think it's fine.
So let's recap. You inherited 4.6 unemployment from Bush, ushered in a disastrous 2 years of economic turmoil, and just recently sent millions of Americans out in the cold by canceling their insurance plans. So can you think of anyone that has helped conservatism ascend more than you have?
Will you call the guard because this interview is over, okay?
Just wait 1 second, Madam Speaker. Don't you believe in the freedom of the press?
We avow the First Amendment. We stand with that and say that people have a right to have a gun to protect themselves.
I guess that explains why the country went downhill after you took over the House. Now I see that you're ready to leave us here at WAAR Radio, so I would like to close out our interview by giving you a chance to come clean on what you were once so proud of, but with the recent state exchange debacles costing the taxpayer over $2 billion and counting, give us your last thought on the Affordable Care Act after all the skyrocketing premiums and the doubling and tripling of deductibles on the hardworking people of this country.
I don't know what was so affordable about the Affordable Care Act, but that's the name they give it.
Well, thank you, Speaker Pelosi.
My pleasure.
And I do hope you listen in later for a segment that we call CFJ's Liberal Education Annex. I'm sure you will be able to learn something since you are the biggest dingbat ever to roam the halls of the Capitol.
Not pleased with the disrespect.
Sorry, I had to get one last dig in.
That's terrible.
Apologies. I hope you listen in later as we will be detailing the Benghazi timeline from the outset of the consulate to the cover-up.
Benghazi, Benghazi, Benghazi.
Exactly. Thank you for joining us here on WAAR Radio.
My pleasure.
Now, before we move on to the next part of Ascend Conservatism, I would like all of you out there to listen to a public service announcement from my favorite charity. It's near and dear to my heart. It's the Wounded Warriors Project.